this hurt your eyes? Is this too bright for you?
Yes.
Tell the truth. Okay, I'm gonna bring it down a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah. I eat for school lunch is chips, a hamburger. The chickens are always cold and they're like dry and they're hard and it's hard for people to eat it. I see like a lot of grease on it because there's lots of grease on the top, and after they finish it there's so much grease inside of it. The pizza's really good, but it's actually not healthy for you.
We have a real crisis in our country. I know a lot of people call it the obesity crisis, but we call it a crisis of poor health. Obesity just happens to be the most visible sign. 50% of children between the ages of 2 and 15 have fatty streaks in their arteries, and this is literally the beginning stages of heart disease. And it's totally preventable.
This affects children across every single demographic. It affects the rich, it affects the poor, it affects children of all races. Nobody is safe from the dangers of the child obesity epidemic.
In most schools in America today, there is no healthy choice. They get foods from the federal government, and in many cases they're not the healthiest things. They're not getting huge truckloads of vegetables and fruits ready to turn into healthy meals. They get a lot of surplus cheese, surplus meats.
And when you see what's in the cafeterias now, you can't blame the lunch workers. They don't have anything but an Alto-Sham to heat food up to a safe temperature, and it's barely food at that. We have no budgets and no concern about what we're pumping into our kids, and then we wonder why they don't like food. We dumbed down their palates.
I look at schools as setting an example for the kinds of foods that kids ought to be eating. And if they're eating junk food in schools, then the schools are telling them that that's okay, it's appropriate, it's what happens in schools. That's not right.
They're probably in that environment 8 hours, so all of a sudden 20 minutes was devoted to a decent meal. If the parents don't want to change a lot of this and the children can't change it, I'm afraid it gets to be survival of the fittest in many ways. You know, some of these people will be tossed aside, literally and figuratively, by the system.
Kids are getting this idea ingrained in them that real nutrition doesn't count and it doesn't really matter. Because if it really mattered, the school nutrition program would provide them with really high quality food every day.
So much has changed from when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we still had vocational training as part of your public school program. Everybody took a certain amount of home ec. You took shop. You could learn these basic sets of skills where you could get a job if you graduated from high school. And you'd have all these basic skills. You could fix your car. You could fix yourself dinner. You were a whole human being. And little by little, I think we became so worried about just test scores, and funding became an issue, making it smaller, not bigger. And we started taking from our own kids. I don't know where that happened. And then the lunchrooms got attacked, and the lunch ladies and the lunch men that used to prepare foods were given less and less equipment and less money. Again, we took from our own children good, nutritious food. Breakfast programs disappeared, intramural activities disappeared, vocational training disappeared. We really dumbed down our entire society, and not just when it comes to the food, to make them book smart. Our children sacrificed in every way imaginable. It literally gives me chills, like a horror movie to me.
I think that if there were healthy meals provided to them at breakfast and at lunch, it would just improve their whole life, because they would eat better, they would feel better, they would study, more effectively, they would, be able to be at gym and have a sustained energy level.
And try to draw it on your work.
Not having good food, I think, has a direct impact on a child's ability to learn and focus in the classroom.
I'll make you stand up sitting in that chair wrong like that.
We can tell when our kids are hungry, we know when they're distracted, we know when they're irritable, and especially if they really haven't eaten at home or they didn't eat the night before at home, their first meal might be here. And so if that meal is, something that is not providing them with any nutrition whatsoever, then what value is it? A lot of our kids eat breakfast here and lunch and have an afternoon snack. And so we've done a few things that we think help that, just by providing fruit or healthy snacks at times when we don't normally provide them, or having, apples and fresh grapes at events instead of cookies. So we've done, we've, I think, tried to impact it in small ways, but not ways that sort of help my conscience.
Now it's time to leave for lunch, so see you later. I hate chicken patties. How you know? They stink like poop. How about lunch? I eat lunch and it tastes good, but sometimes.
I think as a school principal, it's one of those things that I feel like my conscience is sort of working against me, because when I go down there and we're serving it, I know that I don't want to eat it and that I don't think it's healthy, but yet I'm serving it to 600 kids. And that's a conflict for me almost every day.
Oftentimes in the lunch line, they'll either be complaining, I don't want that, or we usually have to finagle with the kids. If you want salad today, if you want peanut butter jelly, if you want the hot lunch, we have to try to bargain with them about what they want to eat. And that usually causes, some sort of a fight with students, and them not being, being really distracted. And them not being a happy person during lunch. And we always want lunch to be a time that the kids are enjoying each other and enjoying their friends. But if they're not, eating the food, then they're sitting there either upset or hungry for the rest of the day.
This is what I was talking about.
We've had times when we have had food served that's either frozen or molded, or or a whole pile of apples that are not fresh. Or you bite into an apple and it's like a soggy mush. Well, you wouldn't eat that and you would throw it away at home. Why is it not being thrown away at school? And I know that I love our kitchen staff. I think they work very hard to help us. They work very hard to, do what they can with what they have. But what they're being provided with is not enough to provide a healthy meal for our kids. All of us, the teachers and everyone, sort of feeling like the parents are trusting us with their kids and therefore assuming that we're not giving them anything that we wouldn't eat. But the adults don't actually even get to eat down there, so you don't even have that rub, because we don't eat the food. We have to, we go out to get food. But yeah, I don't think parents really understand what they're being served. And no, I don't think I do think that if they knew what the food looked like and the sort of the caliber and the quality of the food and the lack, sort of the unhealthy nature of the food, I think they would be upset.
Eat healthy. What does that mean?
No chicken, no.
But then what should you be eating? What does it take? What are just some of the things you think?
We've been talking about health for a while now, and they teach us about what we're supposed to be eating and what a healthy diet looks like, and it kind of contradicts itself when they say we need to be eating right.
It actually didn't even make sense, because I was learning all about my health in health class, and in the cafeteria they serve you cookies and stuff, cookies and ice cream.
School lunch is sometimes it's okay, but other times I just don't know what I'm eating.
We'll be in school for till 4 o'clock, and then when we do have lunch, it's at 1 o'clock, so people be hungry. So I'm getting online, got my food, and it was on this tortilla bed, and I didn't know what it was. So that's the worst kind of food, when you don't know what it is, and it doesn't even look good. I couldn't eat it. My conscience wouldn't let me.
They'll drop the tray in the garbage and just drink the milk, and then they'll go the rest of the day being hungry. And then when I walk outside of school, I can't really blame them for going to pizzerias and the fast food restaurants. but at the same time, that's what I'm teaching them not to go to. So it's incredibly frustrating to see, this trend that we're kind of creating in our own school.
If you have to pick up a tray in our school, you can't just say, I'm not eating. So I would like to tell them, I want you one day to eat the school lunch and see how we feel.
In the 1930s, farmers in the United States faced a terrible depression in agriculture that was actually more profound than the Industrial Depression, because it had been going on for almost a decade when what we think of as the Great Depression began. Farmers were left with very heavy mortgage debt. Many of them had mortgaged their farms in order to expand farm production during the war. In order to try to pay it off, they tried to produce more, and the more they produced, the more surpluses they had, and the more the price declined. They were in a terrible downward spiral. When the Roosevelt administration came into power in March of 1933, one of their highest priorities was to get some relief to farmers, and they couldn't really do that as long as the surpluses were holding prices down. The administration passed the Agricultural Adjustment Act, which gave the federal government new tools for managing farm surpluses. In Chicago, the hog farmers had lots and lots and lots of baby pigs. And because there was some actual shortage in the corn supply, it was expensive to feed those pigs. And so the Secretary of Agriculture agreed to buy 6 million baby pigs and slaughter them before they grew up to be big hogs. They were ground up for something that's called tankage, which is a kind of liquefied pig. And in Chicago, they chose an old quarry, dumped a lot of the tankage into the quarry, and the weather turned hot. There was a terrible smell and everything to call attention to the fact that the government was sponsoring the destruction of good food. There was a major public outcry. Roosevelt was very savvy about public relations, and he ordered a high-profile cooperation between the Agriculture Department and the Federal Emergency Relief Administration to create a program to procure the farmer surpluses and process and distribute them for the unemployed. Out of that cooperation grew school food, and that actually triggered our whole array of federal domestic food assistance programs.
The USDA in the 1930s would take that surplus and ship it off to schools for free. The program was mandated to serve whole milk and butter and cream and custard because nutritionists believed that poor children were not getting enough calories. The Department of Agriculture was established to look after the nation's lands and farming and to help the nation's farmers. Now, it does have an interest in keeping food prices affordable, but it also has an interest in supporting the food industries.
USDA is an agency that is inherently conflicted, and that's not just when it comes to school lunch. They have dual roles. They have a food safety component and an oversight and a regulatory function with respect to the food industry. And they also have, by law, a promotional and marketing responsibility to support U.S. agriculture and to support the food industry and to help promote and grow the food industry. And those missions certainly, I think, come into conflict there. The question of whether they're putting the interests of industry ahead of the interests of students is much more difficult to pin down. Again, they have both of these roles by law, by statute, and we never found any smoking gun where, you know, there was a memo that said, we know this food isn't good for kids, but we're going to buy it anyway because we want to support the industry. We found that both the quality standards and the safety standards for a lot of the meat that's purchased for school lunches were far less than what you see in a lot of the commercial side. And one of the things that we're surprised by was a particular kind of chicken. I think it's commonly referred to as spent hen meat, and this is meat from egg-laying birds that have been retired, that are no longer producing eggs. And nobody really uses them much on the commercial market. Even Kentucky Fried Chicken to McDonald's declines to buy this stuff. And it is, in some cases, commonly sold to the pet food industry. They use it for pet food. And the school lunch program bought a lot of it. They bought about 77 million pounds between 2001 and 2009. The school lunch program tried using it in patties, using it in salads and that kind of thing, and eventually backed off the practice, although there's still, I believe, some being purchased.
Schools can piece together meals in lots of different ways, but whatever they do, it needs to come with a milk. So the dairy industry is really benefiting from the school lunch program. But at the same time, milk is a healthy food if it's low in fat. Whole milk, 2% milk, even though it provides calcium, it's not really worth it because the saturated fat that comes along with it isn't worth the calcium because it clogs arteries and contributes to heart disease.
Dairy products that have so many uses that athletes depend on in building strong, healthy bodies.
Milk doesn't just play a role in formation of bone. There are other health benefits because of the unique nutrient package that dairy foods have that we need to be eating those 3 servings every day, whether we choose to use low-fat, non-fat, lactose-free, whatever our choice may be.
Thinking more about the food lunch program and the fact that it's pushing things on kids that are not even healthy for them. So if we know that, you know, Black and Latino kids shouldn't drink milk, or that a lot of us are lactose intolerant, why are we forcing them to have milk that, as you know, does not take care of that? Or why aren't there other options for them?
I mean, this is an example of dairy industry lobbying at work very successfully, convincing the Department of Agriculture that if you don't drink milk, you don't get calcium, and that milk is an essential nutrient. It's not. There are many cultures in the world where kids don't drink milk, and somehow they manage to survive.
There are alternatives. And if for health reasons or religious reasons or just because you don't like the taste, kids should have alternative options to milk. And I think it's very reasonable to provide soy milk or water, other beverages for kids to choose. And you shouldn't need a doctor's note in order to get that alternative.
Every single food trade association is concerned that nothing be done to advise eating less of their products. That's just good business sense. And since food corporations fund election campaigns, they have a great deal of say. I worked for the government for 2 years from 1986 to 1988, and I was the editor of a big fat report called the Surgeon General's Report on Nutrition and Health, which was the first federal report linking diet to chronic disease prevention. And the report was heavily lobbied, although I was not the recipient of the lobbying efforts. The person who ran our office was. But on the first day that I was there, and I tell this story in my book, Food Politics, on the first day that I arrived in the office, I was told that the report would never say eat less meat. In fact, it probably wouldn't say eat less of anything, because whatever industry it was that advice affected would go to Congress and complain, and the report would never come out. And so the report's recommendations were phrased largely in euphemisms. And the big recommendation of the report was eat less fat. It didn't say eat less meat.
big corporations and the food lobby matter a great deal. The reimbursement comes from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I think that says a lot. And those companies do matter. And that's just, I think, the way the political structure in America with food is set up. And it's perhaps some change in discussion around that. I think it's long overdue. School lunch is it's a more difficult endeavor than I think most people realize. A lot goes into it. What most people see is on the front end, like I suppose in any organization, and the most important part are the meals being served to the children. You have the kitchen staff, the local kitchen facilities, the preparation of the food. Beyond that is the ordering of the food, the supply chain and the distribution. Beyond that, the centralized staff that deals with things like accountability, health control, inspections, for instance. And beyond that, you have the management, and it's all sort of held together with the glue of reimbursement from the United States Department of Agriculture.
The National School Lunch and Breakfast Program serves 7 billion meals a year in the United States. This is not a small operation. It's in 99,000 schools. By the time you take out the labor and administrative costs, and increasingly the bill for electricity in the cafeteria and gas, some schools even charge the school food operation for check writing, you do have typically $1 or less to spend on food. It's not very much money.
5 components for 90 cents we're talking about. For our children, who are our future. And so we really need to increase the amount of money that we put into school meals. We can talk about the reasons why it is the way it is, but the bottom line is we need to change it. And you know, when we look at the school meal, the school lunch, there is about 90 cents that's being spent on the food components. 20 cents of which come from the commodity foods. Those are the foods supplied essentially for free to the schools, complements of our federal tax dollars. And the top 3 foods in the commodity programs are beef, like ground beef, chicken, and cheese. The ground beef ends up as hamburgers. The cheese ends up as deep fried mozzarella sticks or pizza, and the chicken ends up as chicken nuggets, pretty much straight across the board. You know, that's what's served over and over again in schools. And so we need to look at this.
We spend more than $5 a meal on meals at senior centers in New York City. There's a soup kitchen in Lower Manhattan that is investing an average of $7 a meal.
It's really almost too much to put your head around. And it's why I really don't understand why we have to have a conversation asking for $1 for our kids, for each child, you know, or asking for a summer food program. Like, why are we even debating this? Why is this even a conversation? And that's where you can get hung up again. And you get so frustrated and worked up that you get nothing done.
Financial incentives that Washington will set will have a profound impact on school lunches nationwide.
In order to maximize our budgets, we need to rely on the donated commodities that are offered to us by the USDA. And we've been working with the USDA to improve those commodities, and they have. For example, their vegetables are low sodium now. They've reduced the fat in a lot of their products. And they're also trying to make it happen, but because we're under this, you know, large sort of system of commodities and food service all under one, it makes it very challenging to make that happen for 90 cents to $1 for the entire meal.
Now we're talking about a program that costs the government $12 billion a year. And kids also buy food in schools with their own money. So you're talking about something that's big bucks. And there's a lot of money at stake, and every food company wants to be in on the action.
The orders tend to be quite large. When USDA is buying ground beef for schools, it's often buying it in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of pounds at a time. By and large, the ground beef and the poultry that are being purchased for school lunches are being purchased from large-scale suppliers. You don't see a lot of small mom-and-pop farms that are supplying USDA with ground beef for the lunch program. You have to be what they call a qualified supplier, which means that you have to demonstrate to USDA that you can meet certain food safety requirements, that you have processes in place to minimize the chances that meat is going to become contaminated, and that you can meet their testing requirements for that beef and for that chicken and so forth.
And in fact, the State Department of Health said today they believe that this recall will spread. They've been trying to track down which distributors actually took the beef in question and then sold it on down the food chain to the consumer.
You know, some of the things I've read, it's unbelievable. Did you know that if there's a recall for meat, for example, that goes all around the country, no one bothers to tell the schools?
There are 5,000 kids in Franklin schools, and on any given day, most, if not all, may eat from the cafeteria. But it's unclear if any of the recalled meat ever reached their plate. And
so the schools will cook it and feed it to the children. The children who are the most vulnerable to foodborne diseases are the least protected.
The systems that were in place when there is a problem with food that's been purchased by schools is very fractured, and there's no consistent or particularly effective mechanism for getting the word out to other schools that may have bought the same products.
School districts in 36 states across the country are scrambling to get rid of the recalled meat. The recall includes 143 million pounds of beef. It comes after the Humane Society videotaped disturbing images from a California meat processing plant. The images show sick cows being kicked, dragged, and shoved into the slaughterhouse. Much of the meat has already been eaten.
Here's what other school districts have done about the recalled beef. Guilford County schools used some of it, but pulled the remaining beef. Randolph County says it received the meat last year and used all of it.
Unfortunately, we don't have a way to track if the meat was served or not. There's no way for us to know because once it's served, the boxes are broken down and thrown out, and we don't have a track of the SKU numbers that came through.
So sometimes the suppliers may be aware that their food has gone to schools, but they may not even be, because they're selling their food to distributors, and the distributors are then selling their food sometimes to buyers for schools or to food service contractors that have been hired by schools to run their cafeterias. And what we found is that it's very difficult to ensure that that message gets all the way down to the schools, or even to know which schools got it. Schools typically have no idea where most of the food that they're serving children comes from.
It's more complicated than just saying, why is the school lunch program providing these foods? It's a larger question about, what does the food industry in the U.S. look like these days?
We have a food system in this country that produces twice as many calories as the country needs on average. Food companies have to sell that. And they not only have to sell food in this enormously competitive environment, but they must meet demands of Wall Street to not only make a profit, but grow their profits every 90 days. This puts food corporations in an especially difficult situation because they're trying to sell food in an environment in which there's twice as much food as anybody needs and grow at the same time. So the result of that is that they have looked for ways to market foods well beyond the grocery store. Food is everywhere, and they know that in order to get people to buy more food than they need or want, they must make food readily accessible, instantly available, extremely convenient and cheap. And the result of that is obesity. Not because food companies are sitting around a corporate boardroom saying, how do we make Americans fat? That's not what they're trying to do. They're sitting around corporate boardrooms saying, how do we get people to buy more products in an environment in which there's already tons of food available that nobody wants or needs?
When I was a kid, you couldn't eat lunch in a gas station. When you went to the drugstore, you didn't have to walk through 3 aisles of junk food to get to the prescription department. Now junk food is everywhere. It's not like you find baskets of apples and bananas at the checkout stand. No, that's where the junk food is. That's where the candy and the chocolate bars are. The advertising has increased drastically in this country over the last couple of decades. I like the Northern European model where they don't allow advertising to children under a certain age. I think that's fair and that's right, that they shouldn't be advertising food that is detrimental to their health to young kids.
The purpose of Marketing to children is threefold. One is brand loyalty. You get a child convinced that a particular brand is better. That child, you hope, will choose that brand throughout life. The second is called the pester factor, and it's just what it sounds like. You want kids not only to pester their parents, but also to do it in an intelligent way. You should buy this product because it's got fiber in it, for example. And then the third is the one that I think is the most important, and that is you want kids to think that they're supposed to be eating kids' food. They're supposed to be eating food made just for them in funny shapes and colors, packages, unidentified food objects, whatever. You don't want kids thinking that they're supposed to eat the same old boring adult foods that their parents are hopefully eating. And that is so undermining of parental authority around food issues that I think it's reason enough to be really concerned about this kind of thing.
The pressure really is on. Every time you turn on the television set, half the commercials are for snack foods and junk foods, and the other half of the commercials are for medications to undo all the effects of those snack foods that they're promoting.
Kids grow up in this junk food culture that is America today, and they expect to be fed this junk.
These are youngsters who are subjected to $10 to $12 billion a year of food advertising, and the advertising is not for fresh fruits and vegetables.
That's weird. How did your Gushers get in my hand?
Gushers fruit-flavored snacks.
It's fast food and highly processed packaged foods, and that's what kids are. That's what kids think they want.
Yogurt! Slurp! Till it's flat.
There's this excitement around the junk food. So even though my kid loves dates and raisins as a treat, he now wants cupcakes and candy because there's this party atmosphere around those foods. There's never a party when the kids get broccoli. Fast food is an American concept. We created that industry. It came along with our car culture. It came about in this time of prosperity. Look, we're all working so hard. We're happy Americans. We deserve this kind of food. And look, you get a toy with it too. So it's this whole emotional package in that box. It's not just the food. It's this image of happy, healthy American families doing something together, when in reality, that food is slowly killing us.
President Reagan today opened his second White House news conference with some bad news for the bureaucracy. Fewer government workers and a slashed federal payroll.
Millions of Americans today have had to tighten their belts because of the economic conditions, and it's time to put Washington on a diet too.
In the early 1980s, there was a major cutback in the federal subsidy for school foods. And this put school food operators, the food service departments, in a tremendous financial crunch. So the upshot was that school food service was urged to operate like a business and break even, and they began to try and lure those paying customers back into the program by offering more and more of kids' favorite foods.
We've had officials in the Department of Education, in the Office of School Food, tell us that they have to keep their numbers up for the lunches, that they're in the business of serving lunch, and they want to give the children what they want.
I eat like 2 slices of pizza a meal. Serve macaroni with bread.
I usually eat like grilled cheese. Like I won't eat all of this, but I'll eat the chips.
Jello sometimes, like on the side.
It was some meat, type of meat. It was like pinkish.
And chicken nugget. I eat ice cream.
Pizza.
Turkey sandwiches with a lot of turkey and mayo on it.
Butter and some mayonnaise and some mustard, so it's nasty.
It's usually like a milk with like cookies and that's it.
And bagels with cream cheese or butter. I ate What else I eat?
Really the flavored milk and the hamburgers and the chicken nuggets and the pizza, I believe they're all on the menu because those are the foods that kids like. So those foods continue to stay, even though everyone knows they're not healthy, it's fast food.
When people are not starving to death, it's different. We're overfed and undernourished in this country. If people were starving in the streets, that would be a different level of anxiety. But because it's a slow death, people don't take notice as much. They're not as worried about it. They're not as apt to make big changes.
I don't believe if anyone walked into a school cafeteria and saw the environment that's in our schools, that they would be proud of it whatsoever. And I think there's a lot of passivity on the part of policymakers and parents. They believe that this is the best that we can do, and it's good enough. And we need to understand that, no, we can change this, and we can certainly improve it, and that we need to do that.
Back in 1946, when the generals came forward and said, you know, we've got a population out there that can't serve in the military because they're undernourished, well, we're a victim of our own success. It's not a question of being undernourished, we're overnourished, and we're overnourished with empty calories. If we don't do something, we need to accept the fact that we will not be the leaders of the world. We will not be the folks that are bringing the inventions to the table, the breakthroughs in technology, and offer folks a better way of life.
In the United States, nearly 2/3 of the population is overweight. Almost 1 in 3 Americans is obese, and no one wants to be. Americans want to be thinner, and yet old and young Americans are getting fatter and fatter and fatter. We all think it's our own fault. It is not that simple.
I think it's embarrassing for the United States that we don't feed our kids better, that we don't educate our kids better, and that we have so many children living in poverty. That's embarrassing.
There are 17 million American children that could literally go hungry every day that they're not in school because the only access they get to food at all is school food. Then you have the next door neighbor to the hungry. 1/3 of our kids are overweight or obese. We have kids as young as 9 taking cholesterol medicines, trying to clean out their arteries. We did that to them. As we've seen the decline of the middle class in this country, you just see these guilt-ridden parents that are emotionally exhausted. They don't have enough money to pay all the bills and buy a decent week's groceries. Naively and blissfully, they want to imagine that their kids are getting this big hug when they go to school, that they're getting the best education and the best food and the best exercise, and that they're having a much better existence while they're out earning a couple of bucks. It's absolutely awful. I really can't think about it too much. It's awful. And it's a really ironic thing for me because I don't think I'd have a job unless there was a couple of generations of people that didn't know how to cook.
The school lunch program was devised years ago when the concern was children aren't getting enough to eat. Maybe that lunch is the biggest meal of the day, so they made sure that the law said it has to have a certain number of calories in order to pass. Well, nowadays we know that the problem is the opposite. Kids need a little bit fewer calories, so we need some flexibility there, or otherwise we're never going to conquer the obesity epidemic.
We are teaching our kids to celebrate almost any emotion with food. Something good happens, you give them pizza. Something bad happens, you give them pizza. And then for lunch, you give them pizza. So we're sending such mixed messages, and then we tell them to eat healthy and make a healthy choice. It's no wonder our kids are so confused.
I thought they were supposed to be on diets.
I think they're cheating. You would think that if a parent had a choice of what to bring in to celebrate either good grades or a birthday, you'd think they'd bring something healthy, but they don't. They bring very unhealthy foods. It's almost always ice cream, cupcakes, huge cupcakes that they give to these little kids, and the kids eat them because they're put in front of them. It's unfortunate, but parents, they want to be the good guy. I found, my son broke his arm last year, and we were in the hospital, and I kept saying, honey, when this is over, I'm taking you to Friendly's. We're going to get hot fudge sundaes. Honey, we're going to get hot fudge sundaes. And I thought about it afterwards. That was my instinct, to tell him this is bad, but we're going to celebrate it with something really unhealthy. I was actually disappointed in myself for having that reaction, but it's so ingrained in our society.
My heart sinks every time I see an obese child, because I know they're being robbed of some of the vitality of life that they could be experiencing at that time. And when you go through certain periods of your life, you can't get them back. If you miss, your adolescence, it's gone.
I think the most basic cause of the child obesity epidemic is what I call portion distortion. Our kids are just eating way too much food. They're eating so many more calories than they need. And studies show that by the age of 5, if you put a larger portion of food in front of a child, they're going to eat more, about 25% more calories. Not only do they take more spoonfuls of food, but they actually unconsciously put more on each spoonful when they're served a larger portion.
I was at a tennis match a couple of years ago, and Gladys Knight was singing the national anthem, and she had a set of, high school girls from a choir, from a New York City school behind her. And I just looked at the bleachers where those girls were standing, and I said, my goodness, every one of them has a weight issue, and they're 16, 17 years old. My question is, if we're supposed to be educating kids in school, why isn't there education in the cafeteria too? Because obviously people are eating what they think they should be eating. They don't know what to eat anymore.
So our overweight kids are discriminated against, not only socially by their peers, but by their teachers, by other school administrators. Many adults don't realize that they're doing it, but you just naturally prefer dealing with a normal weight person. The scientific studies show that over and over again. So, we think that if we talk to our overweight children about weight, we're going to give them a poor self-esteem. That's not the case. These overweight kids have poor self-esteem already. By talking about the issue and giving them the tools to make healthy changes, you can actually increase a child's self-esteem dramatically. Ignoring it is not the answer.
I've suffered from my own addictions as a result of food. I used to have ice cream in my house all the time, and I couldn't go home if the ice cream wasn't there. Or if I came home and there wasn't enough ice cream there, I had to leave. I had to go get my Haagen-Dazs, or I wasn't going to be comfortable at home. And every time I had a meal, regardless of whether I was dieting or trying to eat the right things, my body craved that sugar before it would let me alone. And when I finally got free of the whole thing and I thought about my behavior, I said, Robin, if this was any other substance, what would you call your behavior? And I said to myself, wow, if it was heroin, if it was cigarettes, you would call me an addict. Having become vegan and fasting, I've had the opportunity to be away from food, to watch how many prompts we get for food all day long, to listen to the conversations people have about food. They're at breakfast talking about what they're going to have for lunch, and at lunch they're talking about what they're going to have for dinner. They don't even realize they're eating when they have a snack, but we're eating all day long. The body's digestion is working all day long, and we wonder why we're so tired. We have to get back to eating healthy, and if it takes everybody getting sick and an epidemic of diabetes and heart disease and early death, maybe that's what's going to wake people up.
I really think that a lot of people are in the position where they've been they've done well in life. They just haven't done good yet. I went to a Jesuit high school here in San Jose, and the Jesuits are very good at pulling you back in once you've been successful. And they pulled me back in to do a middle school here in San Jose about 10 years ago. And I think it doesn't take long before you do a school like that, before you realize it's very transformative for the neighborhood, and it's just a great mission. And I was looking for a better mission. I had come out of tech. Tech's great. You make a lot of people a lot of money, but you know, at the end of the day, is the world really a lot better place because of what you do? For me, it's low-income kids and the needs of low-income kids that are the greatest injustice that we have. So from a justice standpoint, the fact that you're born here versus Palo Alto shouldn't make any difference. And that's really what Rocket Ship's about, is getting rid of that problem. And so that's just a passion of mine, is making sure that wherever you're born, you have the same opportunity to be successful in life. When we opened Rocket Ship, we kind of sat down and thought about the food that many school districts serve to their kids. You want to go to a place in a cafeteria where the food that's being served is food you'd like to eat yourself. And so we partnered with an organization called Revolution Foods, which does healthy food. They're kind of in our opinion, the Whole Foods of school food service. And their mission is to provide very healthy food, organic food, to schools at the federal reimbursement rate for free and reduced meals students.
5 years, we're serving 50,000 meals a day nationwide. Yes, there's problems, there's challenges, there's things that we need to figure out, but you got to get out there and do it. You've got to get out there and be part of the solution. When we started Revolution Foods, our goal was to bridge an access gap in this country. It was to make healthy, fresh, delicious food available to students in low-income communities. One of the things we found when we started this company is there wasn't, the supply chain didn't support healthy foods nationwide. So, you know, we went to DC and we're like, how do we get a clean bread product, for instance? So Rev Foods is, I think, not only, you know, providing healthy meals in schools, but it's completely like impacting the supply chain nationwide in terms of what's available.
We thought it was important to show kids what healthy food looks like every day.
You need to have a healthy meal platform, and you need to be nourishing kids from the inside and the outside. I think every time we put pressure on the system to change, you know, we're catalyzing a much bigger change across the country.
What we're doing in New York City with the School Food Project and getting some of our Yummo meals incorporated into the New York City school food diet is very much like what the First Lady Michelle Obama and Sam, the White House chef, it's very much like what they're doing with the Chefs Move on Schools. They're pairing up the nationwide registry of the greatest chefs in our country. We're calling on them to do community service in the public schools, not to go in and change everything, but to go in and support and help noodle it.
We're going to war against obesity and war to bring healthy food to kids. And let's get all the great minds and gather them together. Nutritionists, chefs, people who put out high volumes of food. Let's bring everybody together and figure out a way to get it to the kids.
One is cinnamon and one is curry powder. How about the green snap peas? Did anybody try those?
Last night here at the restaurant, we opened with 120 covers. We ended up doing 180. I needed to still produce a high quality food, you know, to the customer. So I wasn't going to just all of a sudden cook everything ahead of time and just slam it onto a plate. I think, you know, I wanted to give the customers a high quality experience. So, and I think with the children, they should get that also.
I would like to introduce you to Chef Billy Doherty from New York City Office of School Food.
The New York Coalition for Healthy School Food is a statewide nonprofit, and it's the only statewide nonprofit in the country that focuses solely on school food.
I completely 100% believe that these types of programs can work in this city, in any city in the United States and around the world. There's a huge network of chefs that have been working, and you know, everything is always grassroots, so it really starts from the bottom. You're talking about people that are donating their time, volunteering, donating the ingredients, working to bring people together through food, and that's a great thing. And all of us as chefs, you know, it's our responsibility to help put the right tools and the right food in the hands of all these folks that want to be involved and want to eat healthier and just understand their food and know where it comes from.
by educating the students both through our Wellness Wake Up program and our family dinner nights, where we invite the whole family in for dinner. We have hands-on learning activities, a cooking demo.
Wow! Okay.
Then everybody gets to eat a nice dinner, and then we have prizes. And it's really been a great thing where the families learn together about healthy school food.
I am so honored to be with you all today so you could explore your inner chefs. Okay, now you're right. I have two people to introduce to you today, two high school chefs, chefs that are very inspiring for me. And I want you to introduce you to Christy.
Hello.
And Lazarus.
Hi.
And they are, let's give them a big hand, a big round of applause. What we're gonna make for you today is something called chickpea of the sea. Chickpea of the sea. Oh, you're gonna love it.
These kids deserve a fighting chance. And as a parent of young kids, you know, I want to do everything for my children. I know every parent in America feels the very same way. And so we have to do better by them.
I like the carrot, the salad.
I definitely like the beans and rice and the salad.
Dude, these beans are the best.
My daughter was very glad that she ate it, and I was seeing that she enjoyed it. And for myself, I'm learning how to cook different ways.
Like all the family get to enjoy themselves, open themselves up, and like be excited to eat like fruits and vegetables. They just like to enjoy themselves and like to be happy.
This will be a fun experience for the kids, and they can experience it with their families. And it's giving the kids the tools and the knowledge about, you know, what's nutritious, where do we get the food from, and why is it better for our bodies. This is going to be a long battle because a lot of kids don't understand the relationship between agriculture and the food they eat. And, you know, once the kids learn, the parents learn too. And so it's a great way to have that conversation.
How is it?
It's good.
The biggest thing that we need to do is get the kids involved and, you know, get them not so afraid and throwing their hands into the dirt. We're not too keen on shovels and rakes and stuff, so a lot of it's done with the hands. You want to kind of feel where the food is coming from.
Wait, hold on.
The idea of this program is to teach kids how to plant things, show them where food comes from, show them different items that are grown. There's fresh mint, there's broccoli, there's kale, there's collards, cauliflower, chives, different flowers, tomatoes, melons, strawberries. And it's just to expose them to the items that are out there. And then once the things are done growing, they're going to take the items home with them, expose them to their family, and show them fresh, organic produce that they have grown themselves. And this year we came out, and with the water that we've been getting at the beginning of the year, it just kind of took over the entire bed, and now we have an entire bed full of mint. So you know, we need to start becoming more creative with mint recipes downstairs. When we're using certain items, we try to do as fresh as possible. So we'll call the farmer and say, we need this item now for beef or chicken or turkey or whatever the item may be, and get it in as we need it. So the items that you see in here are items that are usually left over from, you know, the week production, and we kind of circulate them back in as we need them. So things like pizza and stuff like that is made specifically for us. This pizza is actually fortified with 14 vitamins and minerals. And the person who produced it for us, his name is Santi, is a really great individual. Believes in fortifying things, sauces and doughs and breads and stuff with certain vitamins and minerals that the kids wouldn't get on a regular day basis. So he presented this item to us, and it worked out really well. We have steamed summer squash on and jasmine rice. We like to kind of bounce all over the place with different rices and kind of expose them to as many different flavors as we can too. If staff is not going to eat the same food as the kids, then I definitely see that there's something wrong with it. We're trying to make it more palatable for the staff and more palatable for the kids, so everyone's enjoying the meal. And we kind of encourage the staff to eat with the kids. We want to have the peer to student ratio, you know, kind of connecting and see, you know, that they're actually eating the same thing. It's very unlikely that someone would be able to produce a high quality meal for 90 cents or less. Out of the 180 that are out there, we don't use any. I think we tried to use one. I think that was crushed tomatoes about 4 years ago, and they told us if we wanted those that we had to go to New Jersey to pick them up. And it's not worth it for us financially or in any sense to really drive to another state to get a can of diced tomatoes. You need to source a lot fresher ingredients, a lot fresher items, more nutritious items, more raw items.
Any child that gets exposed to food in a meaningful way, whether it's a classroom garden or mom or dad spends time with that child while they're preparing dinner, that child becomes emotionally vested. And food is about sharing and community. If they feel a part of the process of preparing the food, seeing where the food comes from, when it hits the table and everybody's oohing and ahhing and taking nutrition and sharing great times and having all of this going on, that's exciting to a child. And they want to take ownership of that. They want to be a part of that. And it happens immediately.
Bananas.
Granola.
What's that?
Yogurt.
Yum, yum, yum.
It tastes good, right?
Yummy. Wow. This is really good, Miss Torres. Wow. There was definitely a need. I saw the need. All the children brought to school were unhealthy snacks, sugary snacks, totally unhealthy. And I came upon the Wellness Council project, which is a program from the Department of Education.
We're going to look at pictures, Kristen, and we're going to decide if something is healthy or if it is unhealthy. And read this word here, I'll write it here.
The main focus of this program is to come up with a wellness policy for the entire school, where the school decides what the needs are for the school, what you want to do in your school. And what we wanted to do was to get rid of junk food. So in our wellness policy, we wrote the main thing that we wanted was to get rid of junky snacks in the school, to have the children bring in healthy snacks in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. And that's basically how we got started. In order for the school to become healthy, all we needed was to have a committee of teachers that were interested and parents, and we had all of that.
We have carrots and apples, organic carrots and organic apples, and we're not even going to eat them. We take the carrot, we put it in, and out comes the juice.
It's not just teaching reading and writing, teaching someone how to eat and how to eat healthy. I think that's a gift.
Put your thumb up if you liked it.
In addition to not selling any junk food in the school, not even at PTA fundraisers or any other type of fundraiser that we have in the school, we decided just that we weren't going to do it, because if we didn't allow the children to bring in unhealthy snacks, how could we sell them? On the same token, we didn't allow teachers to eat unhealthy snacks. Again, teachers are role models, and if we don't want the children to chew gum, they can't chew gum either. So it went along those lines. And that's how, we became healthy. And slowly, it just spread throughout the school.
When you guys go home, your parents are the ones in charge of feeding, right? But when you come to school, the school's in charge of feeding. And this was totally by chance. I just received this in my mailbox. And it's an article, it's a kids magazine, a weekly reader. If I subscribe to it, you can always, get it in the classroom. But it talks about from farm to you. Currently, only about half of schools serve these healthy foods every day. Let me read that again. Currently means right now. So right now, only about half of schools serve these healthy foods every day?
9, count with me, 10, 11. Who's next?
Kevin E.
Kevin E. Do you want a math question or a reading question? Reading. Okay. What is one health benefit of a strawberry?
It heals cuts and bruises.
Very good. Come take your smoothie. Okay. Thank you. Next person.
I wanted to do it. I wanted to, before I retire, I wanted to give something bigger and more than, you know, than I've done with the children and the parents in my career. And I felt that this was it. Like, I wanted to, you know, share being healthy with them and exercising and how good you feel. I just think that's like the most wonderful thing you can do. Exercise and eat healthy, and it's not just good for you, it's good for the planet, it's good for everybody.
Children in the class will run in place because they're healthy kids. The children in the class will walk in place, walk in place, walk in place. The children in the class will walk in place because they're healthy kids. That's it.
You know, I didn't get killed. You know, like the kids love it. And just, I don't know, just the fact that the children are so receptive to it and they're always showing me what's healthy, what's not healthy. You know, it's like, oh my God, that they want to know.
The thing for me with children is they're so vulnerable. So they'll do what you want them to do if you tell them right and if you talk sweetly to them. And they don't really have a say. Nobody really listens to them.
They don't, you know, come to school from Mars. They come to school from their neighborhoods. They come to school from the environment. So there's a much larger discussion that needs to take place, of which we're a part. There's a sort of mood out there that food does matter. And again, within our environment, as restricted as it is sometimes, there's a real desire to change. But there are boundaries. And the question is, how does one push those boundaries?
The whole country looks to New York City to see what they do. The whole country says, if New York City can do it, we can do it.
In New York City, we have an additional challenge, and that challenge is really size. We do about, you know, depending on the day, in the neighborhood of about 860,000 meals a day. That includes breakfast, lunch, a little bit of supper, but primarily breakfast and lunch, with lunch being the biggest component of our program.
I think that school food in NYC is just such a great forerunner for the rest of the country, small towns and big cities alike. They restructured everything, and they made the choice as a community, as a school community, that they were going to prioritize this to get the kids healthier, to get them to pay more attention in class, to get better grades, and to just get better attendance out of them. They realized that this was a big component.
And we've started this about 5-6 years ago with little things, but perhaps not so little. Changing the name of our organization from the Office of School Food Nutrition Services to School Food. That's what we're about. We changed the uniforms of our staff from an institutional white uniform that had the feel of a hospital or a prison, which gives a certain mentality and aura. We changed that to a little fancy for us. We have a sort of crimson top and khaki bottoms, just to make people feel that we have a brand, we're investing in our brand, and a brand means something.
We have so many schools contacting us and asking for our help that we can't keep up with it. Everything is in place. We know what to do, and the schools want to do it. And it's just a matter of having the resources to really reach all the people that we want to reach.
And it's been so encouraging to see how kids really do take it on, and they love it. It's an empowering thing to be able to cook and share great meals with their family. And it really makes them they're better students. They told me that their IQs are better, that their attendance is better. And I've had students just have total turnarounds based on changing in their diet.
It became a somewhat logical move for us to move into the school system because we were basically feeding the families, the teachers, and a lot of the young people already. And people were starting to ask us, well, how can I get my children to eat better? In fact, through the years, I think I could count 15 or 20 times, parents Parents have come up to us and said, how can I get this food into my school for my child? My kid goes to school, he or she's eating awfully. And then bell kind of went off for Joy and myself. Well, let's look into that. Let's see if we can help. Start with, as they would say, one child. Now it's up to thousands. It's quite incredible to see it happening.
We are unconscious about what we're eating and what we're feeding our children. And I believe that we could make big changes in our health by changing the food in our schools and in our homes.
I feel like I've struggled with this for a long time. I watch our kids. I continue to watch what they're eating. I continue to hear them be angry about what they're eating. And I know they don't know enough. And I don't know enough. So I don't know how to help them transition. I don't know just how to make some changes that will be significant for them and impactful for them. So I'm excited to have a chance to talk to people who have actually, that understand it, that know how to help us do it. And you know, the assistant principal that's joining us, she's done it. You know, she's done some things around wellness and proper nutrition that I think will really help our kids. So I'm excited to hear from her what lessons we can take and open and do in our school.
Oh, hi. How are you? I'm Yvonne Ballister. Joanne.
They're being turned down in job situations. They're being turned down in the military. They're being turned down by the medical establishment. I mean, they're setting themselves for a very, very bad life and lifespan.
Through the Healthy School program, I read every morning, and I do it. I love to read it. I read a little something about being well, being healthy. And the kids, when they see me in the hall, they'll mention it. They'll say, oh, Miss Ballister, you said that to be healthy, we should eat more beans, and they're so cute. They remember whatever you tell them, you know, they internalize.
So we have kids that are struggling with their health, for sure. And I think we have, unfortunately, I think we have as many faculty probably that are struggling with issues of health and what they're eating. And there isn't a lot of education, and there isn't a lot of access.
And you also have children to take care of, a lot of them here. I've seen a lot of them in the hallways, and they're all these beautiful faces looking for you for guidance, and they're counting on you.
I would love to have us have the meeting with the lunch staff or whomever, the regional director, whoever that is. I'd like to do that in the next couple weeks.
You got it. We'll meet with the regional director of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, Amy Hamlin, and we'll get you started.
Okay.
People are being programmed to think, well, I can eat and live any way I want, abuse myself, and somebody in a white coat is going to hook me up and change the oil and make me okay again. It's a tough one. It's really been programmed worse than ever. We're up to like a third generation of that kind of thinking, and it's hard to overcome. And it's not only with the children, it's with the adults too. See, they kind of accept a lower level of performance and health and well-being. We got to get them to connect with the idea that what they're eating is really affecting their life in the present and looking forward.
We are the leaders of the world. That's not a God-given right. That's something that we've earned over time. And if we want to continue to be the model for the world, then the folks that are going to be doing that are sitting at our tables right now. And whether you have one at your own table or not, you ought to be concerned about that.
The media environment in this country is also backwards, where all of the news programs will rush to cover one child who is missing or has been abducted because we can get angry at some mysterious one person who took a child. But when we then turn the cameras onto our population of obese and sick children, that means we're pointing the cameras back at ourselves. We're actually looking at ourselves and how we're treating the rest of the kids. And that problem is too embarrassing for most people to look at.
It's easier to care about one child we can really do nothing about than all the children who are around us every day with a problem we don't know how to solve. We basically know that the diet industry fails everyone. And so what do you do?
The global economy is shaky at best. natural disasters, layer upon layer of them. It's a dark time. Don't you want some good news? Don't you want something that you can literally close your eyes and imagine actually achieving in a generation? This is it. This is that thing. This is that thing everybody can agree upon. It's about our kids. It's about the health of this country. It's the thing everybody can come together and actually do.
There is no reason I can imagine that people wouldn't be in favor of making sure kids are healthy.
If you're involved in your school, you know what they're serving in the cafeteria, and you will demand that it be better. You have to be involved. You can't just leave it to someone else to care more about your child than you care.
But I definitely believe it can be done. And we're proof that it can be done because we're doing it.
It's really, well, you get hungry for more once you start, and everybody can do something, everybody.
I would make like spaghetti with tomato sauce and like lots of healthy stuff inside of it. I would make apples that are healthy and they don't have no scratches on them. I would put strawberries and mango